Amplitude. So this is our introduction to trig graphs, and several important characteristics of a single trig graph, and we're going to get into what the sine and cosine graphs look like on later videos. This one's just going to focus on amplitude. But if you type in a trig graph like say sine x, so y equals sine x, you have to hit zoom trig. So if I just hit graph right now, it's going to just kind of draw a line, and you might not even see the line. But if you hit zoom and then trig, which is number 7, so zoom 7, you're going to get a much more accurate looking graph. Anyway, so this is what your sine graph looks like. And I'm just going to change my window a little bit to go from 0 to 360. And this is handy actually to be able to change your window. Sometimes they give you a picture of something and you could change your window to match that window to compare pictures, but we'll talk about that later on. And so let's just look at this graph from 0 to 360, so only the positive functions of it. You'll notice a couple of characteristics here. It kind of looks like a wave. Amplitude is basically the height of the wave. How high up does it go? If I just drag this picture over for a second, and the amplitude is basically this. How high does the graph go? And so that would be 1 here. Also goes low, down to -1. But our amplitude is basically a measurement of how high up the wave goes. And so this would be an amplitude of 1. But you don't need your calculator for that, because the amplitude is actually the coefficient of the function. And in this case, we see y equals sine x. There's no number written in front of sine. We know when there is no coefficient written, the coefficient is 1. So in this case, we say a equals 1. Because the graph really goes y equals a sine x, or y equals a cosine x. And there's more after it, but right now we're just going to focus on that. So my second sine one, y equals 3 sine x, my amplitude is 3. And I can type that in here. Let's compare it. I'm going to leave the original there. I'm going to go below it and type in sine 3x and see what that one looks like. And, whoops, that's not what I wanted to type in. That's frequency. We're going to talk about that in another video. Not sine 3x, 3 sine x. The coefficient of sine, the number goes in the front. And you'll see that here it's first drawing our original with an amplitude of 1, and now we have an amplitude of 3. We go as high as 3, as low as -3, but our amplitude is 3. This next example, we see that the coefficient here is -4. And let me type this in, because there's 2 things I want to point out about this particular graph. First of all, I'm going to type in -4 sine x. And the first thing you're going to notice is that the graph is kind of upside down, and that's what happens when your a is negative. When your coefficient of your function is negative, it kind of opens upside down. Instead of going up first, it goes down first. But what you'll notice on this graph is, yes, it goes down first to -4, but when we talk about amplitude, it's how high does it go. It still has a positive height, even though it starts down first. And so although the coefficient here is -4, your amplitude is still +4. Your amplitude is always going to be a positive number. How high does it go? And for cosine, it's no different. Here we see our amplitude is 1. Here our amplitude is 2. And here our amplitude is 3, even though it's a negative coefficient. And let me just type a couple of these in for illustration. 2 cosine x. We'll see that it looks a little bit different than sine. It's still a wave, but instead of starting at the origin, it actually starts at the amplitude. It starts at its highest peak, which would be 2 in this case. And the last one, the -3 cosine x, is going to be upside down because of the negative coefficient. It's going to start down, but it still has a positive height of 3. It still goes as far up as +3. It's almost like the max value, or the highest range value it has. Remember, range is your y measurements, and so it goes up to 3. So our range here would be -3 to 3. Our amplitude is +3.